Okay, so I feel it's necessary to define borderline. You know, one of the things that I had to really ask myself early on, when I started looking at personality disorder research and stuff, is, was I a narcissist? Was I a histrionic? And so on. And, was I a borderline? Was I myself, an abusive person? Because that was an ambulance. Was I myself an abusive person because I felt like I exhibited a lot of the traits on the list? And, that's a really common question that people who are in these abusive relationships have, because they're dealing with what are known as the toxic fleas of their abuser. If you lay down with a dog, you wake up with fleas. That's the idea of that statement. Anyway, they're dealing with the toxic fleas of their abuser, and it's, in a way, you're gonna feel like you have those qualities too. And what you have to ask yourself is, am I comfortable being overly angry with people? If you're dealing with the histrionic abuser, for example, someone who acts out in rage episodes, are you comfortable with doing that? Do you like the way that people look at you when you're in those moments? Do you calm down from those moments with drugs or alcohol? For me, it was always uncomfortably no. I'm not comfortable when I rage out. I'm really I do whatever I can to avoid that. Whereas, my abuser seemed to thrive on it. She really did seem to thrive on it. So I was able to check that one off my list. Narcissism. Am I a narcissist? Everybody has a little bit of it to a certain degree, but it's just like the degree between raging out and not letting people step on you. There's a difference there. You don't have to rage out on somebody for them to recognize that you're not a carpet. Whereas someone who engages in histrionics frequently, they're gonna rage out. It's the only language it's the only way that they understand how to stop that from happening, or the only, hammer in the tool shop that they want to use. Well, you can't do that, obviously. You can't just rage out at everybody for every imagined or perceived slight. Well, anyway, back to the narcissism thing, is it important for me to recognize my accomplishments in life? Yeah. But do I rest on my laurels on them? Well, no. That was a beneficial thing of the way that I grew up. I grew up, honestly, with a lot of people who were better at the things that I enjoyed doing than I was. But I didn't care. I kept doing the things that I enjoyed doing. I had friends who were better at any one given thing than I was, but I was great at a lot of things. I never considered myself the best at this or that, but, I was pretty good at a lot of shit. It's like doing these videos. I'm not the best one. I have a lot of my favorite presenters that I wouldn't even think that I would ever be on their level. But I like what I do, and I like how I do it. But I don't have a puffed up view of myself. My time, my resources, my abilities are very limited in what I can do, especially being with a borderline, I record the audio for most of these things while I'm out doing my day and night jobs. There's only so much time I can devote to this thing, whereas if I wasn't with her, yeah, I'd have a lot more free time to spend editing and, running through a good filter. But anyway, I'm not a narcissist. So what I had to ultimately ask myself was, do I do some of these things? Am I guilty of having acted in these ways for my own, self-preservation with her? Have I white knighted for her. Yeah, I did. I was never comfortable with it, but I did it just to get by, And that's really the difference here is, are you doing things just to get by? Like if the abuser wasn't standing there watching you, paying attention to everything that you do, would you do those things? I think for a lot of us, the answer is no. No, we wouldn't. Give me a moment here. I have to find an address. Okay, so yeah, narcissism, do I willingly manipulate people to get my way? No, I don't. Did I do it for her sake, or because no other option was presented to me at the time because we needed money or something like that? Did I steal for her? Yeah. I realized one day, I didn't steal music. I didn't use torrents to get movies or PC games or anything like that. I didn't do any of that stuff when I was single. I would just pay for a service, When MP3s came along, I was one of the last people that I knew of that signed up for Napster. Now, I eventually did it because it was the only way I could get my hands on music that wasn't available locally, but I still wasn't above going and buying a CD. If I really liked a band and I had enough cash, I'd go and buy all their CDs, I didn't care. I didn't care whether I bought music or downloaded it, but I only tried to download stuff that I absolutely couldn't find. Because honestly, the quality of CDs back then versus what you could get as a song file, the difference in the sound was vastly different. But again, I didn't turn into a digital thief until I got with my abuser. I generally liked most people around me, and I could get along with most of my coworkers as long as she wasn't there poisoning my ears with, so-and-so secretly wants to date you, that kind of thing. So again, I never had a problem with hanging out with coworkers after work, maybe getting a drink, but generally not. I would just generally be like, yeah, I'm just going to go home after work then, But I still wasn't adverse to it. I wasn't adverse to it as I was when I was with her. And not because I was talking shit about her at work. It's just, I eventually got to where I didn't want to hear bad things about the people that I had to spend, 8 to 12 hours a day around. You can only hear so much of that crap from someone that you're laying down next to, from people that you have to see more frequently. Something's going to break in that, and it's going to be either your relationship with the abuser, if you have any kind of way out, it's going to be either you're breaking your relationship with the abuser, or you're breaking your relationships with your coworkers, or you're going to break your relationships with your coworkers, go to a different job, and not go through the same level of crap because you're wiser to what the abuser is going to do. And that was the case with me. I've left a few workplaces because I got tired of hearing my abuser's poison against people she barely knew. I got tired of hearing her poisonous words about these people, and I would eventually have to suffer them anyway. Because, eventually it comes down to, if you're with them for any length of time, they come at you with something like, oh, well, you never keep a job for very long. And it's like, yeah, well, and if you're stuck in an abusive situation where you don't really have any friends, you're not allowed to make any new friends, and you've all but, or possibly even gone all the way with telling your old friends and family to absolutely go to hell, you don't want to talk with them, you're really stuck. You're really, really stuck. So, but prior to her, I had no problem getting along with people generally. That was one of the benefits of having my parents, not really putting any shackles on me as to who my friends could or couldn't be. I learned how to deal with people from an early age. Even though I have Asperger's, I learned how to deal with people in spite of, my social anxiety problems. I've learned how to manage it, is what I'm getting at. And being with her, that management took on a different flavor altogether. Instead, I managed it by simply not forming any new relationships or friendships or anything. Okay, gotta find another place here. Okay. But like I was saying, though, that management solidified itself in a different manner entirely. But am I a narcissist? Do I want to keep her from making friends? No. I have no concern in that either way. Now, and this reflects poorly on myself, but she has a really poor track record with bringing people into our lives that, in so many cases, I've looked at people that she's brought around and I've gone, look, I don't trust, this individual. Because when it comes to things that I've worked hard for and I've earned, I'm very particular about who I want in my home. And I've caught no end of shit from her for it. Give me a moment. Okay, so anyway, like I was saying, though, I looked at, am I a narcissist? No, because I'm not comfortable exhibiting those traits. Not comfortable with histrionic, I'm not comfortable with narcissism. Am I antisocial? Asperger's would tell you to a degree, yeah, but it depends on how we define antisocial, right? My personal alone time has always been sacred to me. Why I initially rebelled against getting a cell phone, which sounds like a very first world thing to say. But I initially rebelled against getting a cell phone when I was a kid. Cell phones kind of came out for general public use, I would say in the late 90s. Like 95 on, people started getting car phones and cell phones and things like that. And I kind of kicked back against that when my parents wanted to get me one. And their logic on the matter was sound, but I didn't care. I didn't want one. Their logic on the matter was, look, we live in the middle of nowhere. We did. I grew up rural. They said, but we live in the middle of nowhere, and if something happens to you on the way to work or home or wherever, because I did drive a lot. I did intentionally drive around a lot and everything, especially when I got my car, my driver's license and my money and all that, because I had a job. They're like, look, you're out a lot. You really should get a cell phone. That way, if we have to get in touch with you, we can. And I told them, no, I don't want one. And, they were like, why? Yeah, we'll pay for it. I said, no. I said, for one thing, they're expensive. And they were at the time. They're much more expensive than they are today. And I said, for one thing, they're expensive. Two, I'm never going to have it on. I'm only ever going to have it on in the event of an emergency. And even at that point, the likelihood of me getting into an emergency where I would have to use it, the odds are so very low, I don't see it being a thing. I said, look, basically it comes down to, I don't like the idea of people thinking they can get a hold of me whenever they damn well please because they happen to have my mobile phone number. And I remember my dad saying, well, that's a really antisocial, attitude to take on it. I said, my time is my own. I don't like these things. I understand if I understand your reason, I understand your logic on the situation, but I don't want one. And they wound up giving me one anyway, and I kept it turned off and kept it in the glove box, and I'd only ever check it when I was stopped somewhere or I was bored. I'd pull it out and see if anybody had called me, and I'd call them back. But yeah, even a pager would have been completely wasted on me at that age. So I would have just kept it in my glove box too. I didn't like them. They were just another thing for me to have to carry around. Well, but even in that, like I said, I'm not antisocial. I have no problems connecting with people, making new friends, that kind of thing. Particularly because I'm very fair-minded, and people are really drawn to that. And I've got a classic reputation of being honest. The old phrase was honest to a fault, because I don't mind speaking my mind, even if it offends you. I feel like you're going to be better off. We're going to have a better relationship if you know where I stand and why, than if you're going to have to second guess my motives for something. So I'm not antisocial, and I don't use the sociability to try to move upward in life. I don't ask people for favors. I'll try to do something to my own detriment before I ever ask anybody for help, unless I absolutely know that I'm not asking for a big favor, such as if I get up on a ladder and I ask somebody to hand me something up. At the same time, if I see somebody working something up and down a ladder, I'll ask them, hey, do you need help? And I'll help them, and then I'll move on about my day and not really think about it again. Because I'm fair-minded. So I'm not antisocial, Which brings me around to, if I'm not any of these other things, then I also, by definition, am not a borderline. Because I don't exhibit any of these other traits. And borderline is an exhibition of almost all of those other personality disorders. Which, when I realized it, it was like an enlightenment moment for me. It was very zen. It was very, oh, thank goodness, because there's if you have any of the registered personality disorders, there are basically no drugs, you can take to alleviate those things. No registered mental drugs anyway. A lot of personality disordered people, though, they will often turn to drugs to, momentarily alleviate their social problems, their whatever. They'll use them to ply people with. But that's another major difference. Is I've never been a drug addict. I can put anything down. I mean, I love coffee, for example. I love caffeine. I like to think that if I had been born in the Harry Potter universe, I would have been a potions master, for the way that I do understand liquids and their interactions and stuff. But ultimately, not an addict. Give me a moment. Okay, so yeah, that was, like I said, though, just made my last delivery of my day job. But yeah, it was comforting to me to know that I'm not a borderline, because I'm not a narcissist, because I'm not this, I'm not that. I don't exhibit those traits, and I've only ever exhibited them because of who I'm with, because of the survival mindset that I had to be in, to last, frankly, with the crazy borderline person that I put into my life. I have an obvious codependency issue in that, I couldn't bring myself to let her go when I had the opportunity to do it. But again, we come down to, but is that really codependency? Because I don't feel like I need her in my life. I don't have, my identity is not wrapped up around being with her, That's My identity, though, is I'm a dad. I'm a father, and I have responsibility to my child. Now, my wife had my abuser had 2 kids when I met her, right? And we had my son a couple years after we had been together. Now, an important thing to realize here is that I don't feel beholden to her oldest 2, because they are both legal adults now, and they both have jobs, they both have incomes. And I did, as a dad, I helped them get those jobs, and I've helped them get to work, when they needed help, and I've helped them with their bills and, money situations and things like that, and they have conversely helped me when they've been able to, or when I've asked them, hey, look, can you throw me a bone here? With one exception, and that one exception is recently I asked my daughter, the middle child, she's almost 20 years old. I asked her the other day. Now, keep in mind, I've gotten her jobs at both of the places where I work, because it was an easy fit for her, both places. And even though I know what she makes per week, I don't think about it because it's her money, and I don't charge her a dime to stay with us. Now, generally, she will pitch in for small things like groceries or, things like that if we ask her to. Not we, if the abuser asks her to. I've never ever done that. Or she'll buy stuff of her own volition, like, I'll pay for this today. Okay, cool. I don't think about it. Well, the other day I was getting low on my fuel, and I asked her, hey, if I've got a fuel treatment, but it's going to require that I do a fill up, I can afford this much in gas, can you do the other $20 it's going to take to fill my tank here? And she balked. And I just said, okay, don't worry about it. Just, like I wasn't shocked. I was disappointed. I wasn't shocked. Now, if you flip this around, had I been, her mother would have gone on a tirade about being ungrateful and all this other stuff. But I didn't do that. And I could see her tense up when she said, no, I can't, So don't worry about it. And I'm not going to take it out on her, but it was like, okay, well, And I didn't dig. I didn't put in any digs like, well, you're your mother's daughter. I didn't do any of that shit. It's not necessary. Because eventually what's going to happen is the kids are either going to realize eventually that they grew up in the situation that they grew up in. Maybe they'll be grateful that they had one sane parent around. Maybe they won't. I don't know. I don't dwell on it because I can't do anything about it. But the only person's brain we can really affect to our benefit is our own. And in my case, I know who I am. I know what I'm not, which leads me to know more about what I am. And that's all that we can ever expect out of ourselves. So you have to ask yourself the question, when I do these things for my abuser, when I'm doing anything for my abuser that I know is wrong, I know in my heart is wrong, am I doing it for them? If you're doing it for them, you're still doing something wrong, okay? You're still doing something that you find personally, morally objectionable. But it's not who you are, and that's a thing that you have to keep in mind as you work your escape plan to get away from the abuser in your life. is that you know that's not you. And it's honestly, it's very easy to change those things up once you're out. Like in my case, you know, the abuser had me, she had me downloading every damn thing in existence, even stuff that was, you know, only showing on Netflix, like let's say the Daredevil TV series or Black Mirror, right? If she wanted to watch these things, I was expected to go to a torrent site, go through all the hoops that I'd jumped through to get, you know, whatever it was that she wanted. When you come right down to it, though, once I was out and away from her for a while, I set up a Netflix subscription, and I told her, look, I'm not comfortable, you know, torrenting these things. It's basically stealing. I don't mind paying for Netflix. So we pay for Netflix. You know, that's just one example. But I'm going to go. I've got a lot of other crap to do today. You guys have a great day. If you feel like I've earned it, please consider throwing me some Bitcoin. Bye-bye.